let's talk about persuasion. You've made it, guys. What a good news that is. We are on the last setting for today, the non-violent resistance setting. And they really go into quite a bit of detail. And I'm actually asking you to finish off this particular section by reading through the non-violent resistant efforts that have been done in South Africa for various topics. But let me explain to you first what we are actually talking about. The word kind of betrays what's behind it. Non-violent resistance obviously has to do with you not using physical violence to express your political views or to bring across your political ideas. It doesn't mean that you are not violent in a different way. So you can use psychological violence or structural violence in order to still push forward your particular agenda. Usually we do see non-violent resistance in quite a positive way because it is civilians like you and I who take to the streets in the form of marches, in the form of boycotts, in the form of strikes, even sit-ins or fasting threats. And it is somewhat admirable to see how people take initiative and how people are standing up for what they believe in. What is it supposed to do? Of course, it is supposed to stir the pot, agitating the people who make the decisions and hoping for the best that the protest or whatever you're doing is going to culminate in the decision makers actually revisiting their decisions or making other decisions or overcoming injustices that are currently in place in your society. They also pronounce a little warning. If you want to go for this particular strategy, you better are very persistent and you better choose your timing correctly. There were quite a few strikes and protests happening under Lockdown 3 regulations, and I just felt a little bit bad for the people who went out to the streets because society is so preoccupied with a pandemic that they can't really take notice of what is going on with that particular cause. Which brings me to exactly the next point. The people who use non-violent resistance are obviously not the decision makers. These are usually not your governmental workers or the politicians who actually come up with certain policies, regulations, laws, etc. So it's people outside of the normal decision-making realm. And these people want to bring about social change. What are these social changes usually directed toward? Problems within society, of course. Maybe there is a moral principle that has been violated. These are usually the things that pop up in this realm. Now, of course, it's sensational. It's sensational to have a sit-in strike or for people to say, I'm going to tie myself to the tracks until you actually stop the transport of nuclear materials. It's very, very sensational. So it attracts a lot of attention. It's a very newsworthy story that you're creating with these non-violent resistance methods. But please be aware that the effects of this resistance are usually quite short-term. Thanks to the publicity that is received, you might be able to change public opinion a little bit. And of course, you want to change it toward your cause or toward your idea and away from the hegemonic idea or the governmental idea. So, as I said, what we aim to do is to dramatize the issue. And therefore, nonviolent resistance is usually the means to an end and actually not the end. The end is for the government to change practices. So this will help us appeal to the government. I'm sure you know about Gandhi and you know about Martin Luther King Jr. They are very famous for using nonviolent resistance to press through their particular grievances and their particular points of contention. But even the very successful nonviolent resistors did actually caution the people who also want to engage in it by saying it requires a lot of commitment and also a little bit of courage. As I pointed out, nonviolent resistance is a strategy used to control or combat or destroy the rulers in power. And usually it culminates in 3 ways of authority being affected. Number 1 is that non-violent resistance might show how much authority the opponent has already lost. Number 2 would be that it may help to undermine the authority further of your opponent. And number 3 is that people may transfer their loyalty to the rival in the form of a parallel government. Obviously, here we are talking about the large-scale non-violent resistance movements, for example, by Gandhi or by Martin Luther King Jr. And yes, once you are getting the story, once you're having that publicity, people might actually join your cause and your resistance movement gets even more traction and gets even more powerful. So this is it. You made it. All 4 settings we have discussed. The non-violent resistance setting, we had the debate setting, we had the small group bargaining setting, and of course we had our oratory setting. Please revise them quite carefully. Good for you to know. Bye. That's it for today. Keep on learning.